Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us here to discuss the important and urgent issue of the York Region transit strike. This strike is affecting more than 70,000 commuters throughout York Region, and despite the significant personal and economic hardship this disruption has caused to date, no serious effort has been made by the parties to resolve this issue. Today, my Progressive Conservative York Region colleagues, Peter Shurman, MPP for Thornhill, and Julia Munro, MPP for York Simcoe, and I are here to call on the McGuinty government to enact back-to-work legislation to end the York Region transit strike. I might add that we have also advised our other colleagues in York Region, the other MPPs, and told them of our intention here. We discussed that we would be calling for back-to-work legislation, invited them to join us, and unfortunately they are not here. I don't think that should be interpreted as saying that they don't support this call for an end to this strike, but I did want to ensure that people were aware that they were invited to this media availability. We believe that this back-to-work legislation should be the first order of business when the legislature resumes on November 21st. We're hopeful, of course, that the strike will have been resolved by then. But given the fact that there seems to be no urgency on the part of either side to date, we fear that it may well come to that. During these difficult times, the personal and economic hardships caused by this disruption cannot be allowed to continue. To protect our communities from future transit disruptions, we will also be asking the McGuinty government that the Toronto Transit Commission Labour Disputes Resolution Act 2011, which essentially declares the TTC an essential service, be extended to include York Region and, in fact, all transit services in the Greater Toronto area. It's difficult for us, on the one hand, to say that it's important to have an integrated and seamless transit system in the region, and then have different ways of dealing with work disruption with the different areas throughout the region. I'll now ask my colleague Peter Shurman to add a few words. Peter.
Thanks very much, Frank. Thornhill residents, Thornhill constituents are worried about the impact of the York Region transit strike on their ability to get to work and to get their kids to school. They are not interested in waiting for an end to this dispute any longer. We're now hitting the 3-week mark. They are interested, and they deserve decisive action on the part of the government to put an end to this strike. And we are here today to do just that. We want the McGuinty government to put an end to this strike, and by extending what was Bill 150 to transit services in the GTA to prevent these types of disputes from undermining the already fragile economic stability of communities in the entire Greater Toronto region. York Region and other communities in the GTA should not be made victims of power plays between unions and service providers. Our residents deserve the same protection from the personal and economic hardships caused by transit strikes as those living and working in the City of Toronto, and I can assure you that I have heard from numerous Thornhill constituents saying just that. Thank you very much, and I now invite my colleague Julia Munro to comment on this issue further.
Thank you very much, Peter, and I'm pleased to join my colleagues, Frank Klees, the MPP for Newmarket Aurora, and Peter Shurman, the MPP for Thornhill, to call on the government to take action to end the York Region transit strike. People in my riding and throughout York Region depend on York Region transit to get to work, to get to school, to medical appointments, and for many other needs. Every day that the McGuinty government allows this strike to continue costs jobs and costs families. 50,000 people are without the transit services they need, and they are waiting for someone to help them. The union and the contractors will not reach an agreement. York Region will not get involved, leaving negotiations up to the contractors. Only the province can bring this strike to an end. All we are asking is that the government give the same support and consideration to the transit users of York Region that it did for the transit users in Toronto. We ask that the first order of business before the legislature when it returns on November 21st is a bill to legislate an end to this strike. And we ask that you extend the previous Bill 150, the Toronto Transit Commission Labour Disputes Resolution Act 2011, to include York Region and all of the transit services of the GTA. It is time for this government to step up and help the people of York Region who depend on public transit to get to work and to go about their daily lives. Our constituents are just as important as those in the City of Toronto, and they deserve the same support from the government. My constituents feel they are victims in this process. No one is at the table for them, and that's why we are here now. And I'll turn it back to Mr. Klees.
Thanks, Julia. As you heard, the effects of the York Region Transit strike on individuals, on families, and businesses are far-reaching. Last week, my colleagues and I issued a statement urging the parties involved in the strike to get back to the bargaining table so that they can immediately resolve this dispute. That hasn't happened. Due to the lack of progress in negotiations and the urgency of this issue today, we presented two initiatives that can end the current service disruption in York Region. I personally spoke with the Minister of Labour just a couple of days ago and asked her to intervene to encourage both sides to resume negotiations, to get serious about this, and she undertook to do precisely that, to do what she could to encourage the parties to negotiate a settlement. We're not encouraged at all by the activities that have not taken place since that time. We want to ensure that service disruption in York Region is brought to an end, as well as to communities across the Greater Toronto Area. We believe that this next step will ultimately be important and necessary, and that is the back-to-work legislation. And also, as my colleagues indicated, we believe it's important that the essential services provisions be extended to not only York Region, but all of the GTA transit services. We invited our Liberal colleagues, as I mentioned at the outset, to sign a letter that we have addressed to the Honourable Linda Jeffrey, the Minister of Labour, stating precisely what we've shared with you today. This letter is signed by myself, Mr. Shurman, and Ms. Munro. We do not have signatures on this letter at this point from our Liberal colleagues. We trust that they will see their way clear to adding their support, and if not by signing this letter, certainly by speaking in support of this at the Cabinet table and in their caucus deliberations. We're happy to take your questions.
I'm curious, calling for back-to-work legislation it necessarily entails arbitration, and you guys have been very critical about the arbitration awards have been too high, so I'm just wondering how, what you're weighing here and how you might see a way around any kind of problem from the arbitration.
Well, I think there are two issues here. One is, obviously, our preference has been that there be a negotiated settlement. When we spoke to the arbitration issue, we also made it very clear that we aren't opposed to arbitration. The issue is what and the framework within which arbitrators do their work, and that is to give consideration, obviously, to the ability of jurisdictions to pay. We would hope that in fact, would be the parameters within which the arbitrators would conduct their work. And I think what is clear here is that the public interest has to be taken into consideration. We're suffering economically. There are students who can't get to their classes. There are people who are losing jobs. I'm hearing every day from people who are losing their jobs because they have no other way of getting to work. And so we believe that it's in the public